Okay, the purpose of this video is to learn about solving quadratics using square roots. Remember, quadratics are any kind of expression that involve an exponent of 2 on the variable. This is the most simplified quadratic here, just plain old x squared. You could have x squared plus a constant, like here, x squared plus 16. You could have the trinomials like this, but any expression that has an exponent of 2 on the variable is a quadratic. Now, most quadratics are going to be considered to have the form of this. You have the ax squared plus bx plus c, and when we're talking about solving them, we are talking about having an equation. You don't solve expressions, you do solve equations. So, these all have to become equations equal to something. And this would be the normal form when we're looking to solving quadratics. Now, in this video, we're not going to focus on the extended form here. What we're going to be looking at is when you have this type of situation, and one other special case there. But we're looking at equations that can be solved, quadratic equations that can be solved. Quadratics can be solved that are using square roots. No other weird, odd method, just using square roots. Simple, straightforward square roots to solve. Okay, let's take a look at the basic square root function here. We're going to look at this first one over here. And this one we have x squared equals 16. Now, to solve this one, we would do the square root of both sides. And remember, whenever you're doing the square root to solve, you are finding both the positive and the negative of that value there. Because when you plug back in, well, we'll take a look at it when we get the answer here, but we have to find both the positive and the negative of the square root of 16. So x, when you do the square root of x squared, you end up with x. Square plus or minus the square root of 16 is going to give you plus or minus 4. So this really is two answers. It's x equals 4 and x equals negative 4. It is both of these. Only just writing it like this tells you just have that one answer. That one answer actually gives you both of these in one little form. But there really are two answers. Okay, now let's take a look at the next one here. This one we have to do a little bit of work in between here. We do have to add 8 to both sides to get rid of the minus 8. So once we add 8 there, that's going to make this cancel out. You end up with x squared is equal to, ooh, we can draw a nice equal sign there, is equal to 25. Then I would do the square root of both sides. Again, it would be the plus or minus square root of 25. So we're going to get x is equal to both the positive and negative 5. Again, this is fine as an answer. You could write it with the and like you did up here, or leave it as a plus minus like that, and you'll be fine. All right, a few more steps on this next one here. We start off by adding 5 to both sides. That gives us 2x squared is equal to 98. Then we divide both sides by 2. We get x squared is equal to 49. Okay, which is going to give you, let's move this over a little bit here like that, and then we'll do the square root of x squared is equal to plus or minus the square root of 49, which gives you x is equal to plus or minus 7. All right, then we move on to this one at the top here, which is kind of interesting in that when you do the square root of x squared here, when you try and do plus or minus the square root of negative 25 here, you'll find you cannot do the square root of a negative number. Well, if you try to do the square like this, you might get an answer in your calculator, but it's probably going to have a little e on it. That's because there are no real solutions. You cannot do the square root of a negative. If you do, you're working with imaginary numbers, not real numbers, so there's no real solutions. All right, moving on. This one I would subtract 17 from both sides. We get x squared is equal to 8 minus 17 would be a negative 9. Oh, then when I do the square root of x squared, and I end up with a square root of a negative again. So again, this has no real solutions. Doesn't mean there's no answers, there's no real solutions. There are solutions, but just no real number solutions. Looking at the last one here, I'm just going to change colors here. We add 6 to both sides. We're going to get 3x squared is equal to 81. Divide both sides by 3. I get x squared is equal to, running out of space here. Let's see what I can do. Let's see. Move that a little bit. Let's see if I can move this a little bit. All right, let's see here. Okay, I know I'm messing up some of the screen there. Sorry about that. Let's see, what we're going to get here is x squared is equal to 27. We do the square root of x squared is going to be equal to plus or minus the square root of 27. Now, this is going to be our answer here because we can't, this is going to give us a decimal answer. The radical answers are not always going to work out to be whole numbers like this. They may end up working out to be decimals, or in this case, irrational numbers. That can happen. So that does not mean there's no answer. It's not a nice integer answer, but it's still an answer. Okay, now it's your turn to try the video. So pause the video. Pause the video, give these a try, then unpause for the answers. All right, welcome back. Let's take a look at those answers. And here they are. All right, now this one was pretty straight. The first one was pretty straightforward. Square root of 64 is going to give you plus or minus 8. Here you had to add the 17 to both sides, which would give you 36, and then do the square root, which gave you plus or minus 6. Here you would subtract the 12, which is going to give you 20, then divide by the 5, which is going to give you 4, and the square root of the 4 is going to give you plus or minus 2. Okay, now here are some special cases. You remember when it came to factoring, there were some special cases? Well, this kind of links to those special cases there. When you have a binomial squared here, like this, to solve it, you would need to do the square root of both sides. So you're going to do the square root of this, and again, it's plus or minus the square root of 64 here. So this is going to work out to be x minus 9 is equal to 8, plus or minus 8. Now, when that happens, we have to take this x minus 9 equals positive 8. We're going to split it into 2. Now, another one is going to be x minus 9 is equal to negative 8. For both of those, you're going to add 9 to both sides to continue the solving process. Not very good for the add 9s writing them there. And you end up getting x is equal to 17 and x is equal to 1, because the negative 8 plus 9 gives you 1. And this would be your answer there. Now, next one, you're going to do the square root plus or minus the square root of 16. Square root of 16. This is going to give you x plus 7 is equal to positive 4, and x plus 7 is equal to negative 4. Subtract 7 from both sides on both of these. You end up getting x is equal to negative 3. Over here, you're going to get x is equal to negative 11. These are your two answers here. All right, one more here. If we do the square root of this and the plus or minus the square root of this, again, we find that we're doing the square root of a negative. So this one has no real solutions. Keep in mind, if you ever have to do the square root of a negative, you're going to have no real solutions. Okay, well, yes, you do. So it's your turn again. Pause the video, give these three a try. Welcome back. And here are your answers. First one, pretty straightforward. You're going to do the square root of both sides, which is going to make this a 10. Then you'd be adding 7 for the 17, and adding 7 to the negative 10 would give you a negative 3. Sorry, add it to the negative 10 would give you a negative 3. Here, you'd have to divide by 2 first, which is going to give you the x plus 4 squared is equal to 36. You do the square root of both sides, you're going to find you're going to have x plus 4 equals 6. When you add to the positive 6, you get a 2. When you add to the negative 6, you got to get a negative 10. This one is straightforward. Just want to make sure you notice that 0 can be an answer. When you do the square root of 25, you get 5. So you're going to have plus or minus 5. And when you subtract 5 from the positive 5, you're going to end up at a 0. And that is a possible answer for these. It's not no solution when you have a 0. That is an actual solution. All right, thank you for watching. I hope you've learned something from this. Again, feel free to subscribe to my channel so you can keep track when I add new ones. I do not monotonize these videos because I do not want extra commercials in them. Hopefully you appreciate that. Thank you. Bye.